Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Cash That. This is your host, Joe Dellera, and this episode is once again brought to you by our good friends at Rhythm. Rhythm is the #1 AI betting tool in the market. And actually, one of the coolest things that we're doing right now is it's about to be March Madness season. A lot of you know, like, this is an NBA podcast. We do a little bit of college stuff. We'll do a little bit of Major League Baseball. We obviously do some WNBA as well, but March Madness gets to be crazy. There's so many teams, so many players, so many things that you don't even know. And you know what you can do with Rhythm? You can literally go and request a bracket using their AI tools, and it is beating the market by like over 30% last year is the way that they looked at it with the data that was run through the Rhythm model, projecting the way the bracket was going to come out. And it helps you. So you could build your own model with the things that you think are important, and it will help you generate a bracket based on the things that you think are important. Or you can use one of Rhythm's AI generated models that they have on their back end. And you can get that for an entire week for free with the link in the bio down here. And I'm sure you're going to love it. I'm sure you're going to want it for actually betting on all the games moving forward. You can come back and get 25% off your first month with the code down here in the bio. So we're obviously going to get kick-started with this pretty big Wednesday NBA slate, but the game of the game of the week is going to be this game between the Boston Celtics and the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I want to just dive right into this game. I think there's so many little nuances here that we can look at, and I'm covering the game in written form for the Action Network, but sometimes we can talk about it a little bit more when we're here. So the big thing is obviously that Jalen Williams, J-Dub, he has a hip injury. He missed the back end of the game on Monday against the Denver Nuggets, and he's going to miss this game as well. The Boston Celtics have a number of injuries as well here. Jason Tatum is questionable. Jaylen Brown is probable. Kristaps Porzingis is questionable due to illness. So I think that both of the Jays are going to play here. I think this is kind of like a measuring stick game. I think this is a good spot for Boston, maybe test some things out, see if there's certain things that work, see if there's certain pressure points for Oklahoma City. I would not doubt that Joe Mazzulla has something cooked up for this game, and I'm sure Mark Daigneault does as well. But without Jalen Williams, it kind of changes it a little bit. You might not want to show all of your cards here, or so to speak, especially after the fact that you won the first game between these two back in December. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. For Boston, the Porzingis illness is interesting because Porzingis talked about it on X. He said basically it's a viral illness. They have no idea what it is, and they think he's trying to work back. He got upgraded to questionable for this game. And, even if he does come back, I would imagine that he's probably going to be a little bit limited here, maybe 20-minute rotation, something like that. So definitely something to keep an eye on. I would actually think if he comes back, I probably would want some Horford stuff, because I think that Horford will probably play longer minutes than you would normally think. The other player actually that I want to take an under on, I think I'm going to take a Pritchard PRA under. In a lot of these close games, Pritchard just doesn't get as much run as he does in a lot of the games where they blow teams out. So I think this is going to be a close game. I think this is going to be a competitive game. I'm going to be looking at a Pritchard under. But when these two teams played back in December, really the biggest thing was that Oklahoma City completely stifled the Boston offense. And look, the Celtics shot 17% from three. Do I think that's going to happen again? No, I don't. Oklahoma City has played very well, and they have done a really good job in terms of what they allow from three-point range, in terms of efficiency, right? But they allow the third highest frequency of three-pointers in the league. So they're getting these up. I think that this specific performance is going to be very difficult for Oklahoma City to replicate, especially without Jalen Williams. I think that Oklahoma City, by scheme, by game plan, they allow a lot of threes. And the reason that they allow a lot of threes is because they close out on them very well. You have a ton of elite wing defenders. So you're able to close out on those spots. Even shots that maybe look a little bit more open are not as open as they actually are, or is not as open as they kind of perceive them to be at the time of the shot. Sometimes you're taking these threes and it's late in the clock because the team did a really good job of not allowing you to get into the interior, get to the paint, get a good shot. So you're settling for a bad three, right? Because there are good threes and there's bad threes. And I think that that's some of what's going on here. Without Jalen Williams, though, he's a player that plays max minutes. He's an excellent wing defender, can guard multiple positions. You can really guard 1 through 5 if you needed him to, depending on the 5. In this Celtics matchup, he could probably guard some of the 5. And without him, obviously Oklahoma City is deep, but the windup is that you're starting to get further down into the rotation. I don't know how really narrow Daigneault wants to make this Oklahoma City rotation for a regular season game, right? And I think that that's going to be something that bothers OKC in this spot. So while they're going to have Chet here, I think the Williams injury is just extremely significant. He's the second highest usage player on the team. He's been on the floor really all season, only missed a couple games. Without him, it takes away like a clear number 2 option who not only can help others score, because he's a decent facilitator, good rebounder, good kickstarter, good secondary, tertiary facilitator, right? But he can create his own shot. And I think, like, as much as I think that Josh Giddey was not a good fit for this team last year, and really this year, I don't think he'd be a great fit. Without Jalen Williams, I do think that it kind of puts a little bit, probably too much of the burden on Shai. And Shai definitely does see an uptick. He goes from 40 points per 100 to 55 points per 100 possessions without Jalen Williams. The problem is, how much does that cut into his efficiency? How much does that cut into the minutes then where Shai and Jalen Williams are both off the floor, and you don't have that ability to stagger as much? Chet is somebody who can score on his own, not all the time though. So I do think that this is a tougher spot for Oklahoma City, especially against a Boston team that is going to shoot their threes. They're going to get their threes up. And Boston also has a number of strong wing and perimeter defenders to guard Oklahoma City. And one of the critiques of Oklahoma City, which it's tough because I don't really think that the numbers match up with this, or like it doesn't necessarily align with this thought process, but there is a concern, right, that Oklahoma City's shooting luck, or so to speak, with some of their role players is going to run out. And it's just not going to be as good when you get further and further or deeper into the playoffs. And without Jalen Williams, you have to wonder, is this going to be a problem? Are there going to be situations where there's just not enough offense on the floor? So to me, I think that Boston's injury report, obviously there's some questions here. I think that these guys are going to play. I think that this is going to be a good spot for Missoula to maybe test some things out. So for me, I'm going to lay the points with the Celtics. I was able to grab a -3.5. I think if you can grab -4, I think that's fine. -4.5 is probably where I would draw the line here. I also think that the total has come down from, it opened at like 331.5. It's come down. I'm seeing some 227s in the market right now. I would honestly go over here. I would probably be looking for Boston team total over, maybe more specifically, but I like the over as well. I think that this is going to be a game where it's going to be very difficult for not only for Oklahoma City to really replicate their defensive performance from a couple months ago, but Boston's offense just isn't going to shoot 19% from 3 again. It's highly unlikely. They've been resting their guys and kind of staggering things for the team against some of these weaker opponents before. To me, I think this is a very good measuring stick game for Boston, and it's a game that I think that they're going to want to have going into the playoffs with the idea that this could be a finals matchup. I don't think that they want to go in mentally where Oklahoma City has a 2-0 series lead based on the regular season. So for me, I'm going to be on Boston. I also like Shai. I like his points. I think that the points line it's 33.5. I don't know if I want to go there, but I do think you get some maybe nice like inverse correlation. If you did like Shai 30 and Celtics money line, you probably get a decent price on that. It's two things that aren't necessarily related, but I do think that Shai is going to be in a position where there just isn't a lot of other offense for Oklahoma City. And Boston, I don't think is going to overcommit to helping on him, but I do think that it's just a spot where the volume is going to be there. He's just going to get too many opportunities. So I like Shai 30 plus Celtics money line, something like that. All right, so the next game that I want to talk about is, I obviously want to talk about the New York Knicks. We have the Jalen Brunson injury, which sucks. And I do think that, that's something that New York is going to have to deal with. However, they did a good job in the first game, really without him, in this spot against the Kings, right? So they were rested. They had a good opportunity here, and they were against a Kings team that was at a rest disadvantage. And that has been a really bad spot for the Kings throughout this entire season. Basically, no rest and or a rest advantage. They are one of the worst against the spread teams in the NBA. So save that one, put that one in your hat, come back to it later, right? The Knicks now have a matchup against the Portland Trail Blazers. The Blazers have been playing really well of late. Congrats to anybody that had the Jeremy Grant threes leader thing. That was pretty sick, right? Almost like $4,000 in free bets on that FanDuel promo. So to all like 50 people at Adams. So pretty cool there. But obviously the Knicks don't have Brunson. Jeremy Grant's probably not going to play. Matisse Thybulle and Robert Williams are both questionable for this game. The key for New York was that they really, they spread the ball around really, really well in that matchup against the Kings. Mikal Bridges, 8 dimes on 11 potentials. McBride, 7 dimes on 10 potentials. OG, 8 assists on 8 potentials, which is crazy. Josh Hart, this was a little surprising. Hart only 3 assists on 5 potentials. So the potentials were way down. I think in part he was scoring decently, so that's a little bit to it. Campaign, 3 dimes, 4 potentials. Cat, 3 dimes, 4 potentials. So they were really moving the ball around well. I think that was important, having that type of ball movement. And now they're facing off against a Portland Trailblazers team who obviously has been good lately, but I do still think this is a good spot for New York. New York, I think, is just flat out still a better team, despite some of the success that Portland has had. And New York does have a recipe for winning even without Jalen Brunson. I think part of why they're able to be successful without Brunson is from like a defensive perspective, right? It's very difficult to defend when you have both Cat and Brunson on the floor. They are 2 clear weak points in the defensive scheme. Miles McBride is a pretty good defender, especially for his size. He's positionally a solid defensive option there, especially at the point guard position. And obviously you take a downturn offensively without Brunson when going to McBride, but at the same time, you kind of get some of it back defensively. You're able to run some more schemes. You're able to hide then Cat effectively. It's so hard to hide both Brunson and Cat at the same time. And that's something that they've run into against some of these other teams that can kind of exploit that a little bit better. Now, in this particular matchup, I think that, Miles McBride had a great game the other day. I do think he's going to be able to kind of replicate that performance again against the Portland Trailblazers. Over the last 15 games, Portland has been an absolute sieve to opposing point guards from a scoring perspective. They've been able to limit some of the assists, but I think it's also in part because it's just been so easy to score. And McBride does see a pretty significant uptick, obviously, without Jalen Brunson in the assist department. Here, though, what I'm looking at is we've got McBride over 17.5 points plus assists. It's minus 114 on FanDuel. I like 6 plus assists at plus 285 on FanDuel. And then you can do a little parlay of 20 points, 6 dimes, about 15 to 1 or so. I like that as well. I just think this is a great opportunity for McBride to kind of build on that last performance. I think that it is a softer matchup based on a lot of the numbers, a lot of the recent history. Teams and players have just been torching Portland. So Curry went under, but Cade Cunningham goes over his points prop. Dennis Schroeder over. Aaron Wiggins put up 30 on them. Derek White, 41. Peyton Pritchard, 43. And when you look at kind of what McBride does, he kind of plays in that Pritchard-y role. A lot of threes, can dish to his teammates, can get to the rack if he wants to. And I think that can score in mid-range. So I think this is a great spot. I think that's a great blueprint for him to be able to follow. So I like over 17.5 points plus assists. And I want to play some of those other alternate options there, for him to have a really good game. I also will probably look and see if you can bet on him to be the top point scorer. If they're going to spread the ball around like that, especially with, if Robert Williams is able to play, Donovan Clingan's probably going to play. It definitely is a little bit of a tougher spot for Karl Anthony Towns to score on the interior. And Robert Williams isn't as tied to, he can switch a little bit more than Clingan. And I think that could maybe draw a tougher spot for Cat to score, whether it's from beyond the arc or anything else. So I think that this could be, it's a low key, a tougher matchup at the center position, in my opinion anyway, for Cat right now. But we'll have to see. I don't mind it still, but I want to look for McBride as kind of like a swing or, like a really big alt number there for maybe top point scorer of the game. Now, looking at the next game, we've got the 76ers versus the Raptors. Everybody's out. Kelly Oubre is questionable. Andre Drummond is questionable. Paul George is out. Emmanuel Quickley is out due to rest. RJ Barrett, personal, out. Grady Dick, out. Scotty Barnes listed as questionable as well. I think that clearly both teams are trying to tank. I think that Barnes, questionable. Honestly, he shouldn't play. The ownership should just come down and be like, he's not playing. You need to lose this game. The reason you need to lose this game is if you look at Tankathon, the Sixers and the Raptors are basically tied for their bad record in the league right now. And you just want to lose. You want to get a better pick, especially Philly. Philly really needs to lose this game so that they can keep their pick or have a better chance to keep their pick. The Raptors should be trying to lose too. I don't think that Scotty Barnes is going to play. However, if Scotty Barnes does play, I like over 28.5 points plus rebounds. Minus 120 right now on DraftKings. And look, like I said, honestly, he just should sit. It doesn't make a lot of sense for him to play. But if he does play, I think it's a great spot. And, he's going to get a Philadelphia team that's really thin, and he's going to get all the usage that he can possibly handle. I don't want to bet on the assists because of who the rest of the team is. I want to bet on the points, and I want to bet on the rebounds. And it's a spot where earlier in the season, there was one game where there was no Quickley, no RJ, and no Dick. Pause. Barnes had a 35% usage rate in that game. So that was a huge uptick compared to his season average of about 25%. So I really like the spot for Barnes. 28.5 PR, I think, is very, very easy for him to get a hold of. I think he's going to be able to do that. It's just a matter of, is he going to play? I don't know, but I'd rather I'll give the sportsbook the not even 24-hour front on the money, and they can, have it for now. But I want to get that line in the event that Barnes does play. The next game we've got is the Hornets versus the Hawks. The Hawks are 8-point favorites. Karis LeVert is questionable. Trae Young is questionable. I don't know what is going on with LaMelo Ball. He just has looked terrible lately. It may be in part because we bet on him twice in a row, but he almost fouled out in 15 minutes, the one game. And then last game, he was 3 for 20, basically, from the field. So not 100% sure what's going on there. Obviously, I'm sure the motivations are not great in Charlotte. The vibes probably aren't ideal. And then if we look at the Hawks, Trae Young's questionable. If he's out, you have to imagine that Risa Shea sees plenty of opportunity here. I think that he's going to have a good spot anyway. I think that this is probably a good game to maybe try to back Risa Shea. I would probably be looking at a Trae Young dimes bet if he is able to go here. We don't really have a ton of prop lines right now given the injury, but I would probably be looking at something for Risa Shea. I think that he's going to be able to get a little bit more run maybe as this Hawks team tries to figure out what the pecking order is, how this team's going to progress moving forward, and what exactly they have in Risa Shea for not only this year, but for next year as well. Looking at the Mavericks versus the Spurs, Spurs are 5.5-point favorites. Dante Exum is questionable. PJ Washington is questionable. PJ Washington is the one that you really need to watch for this spot, but Najee Marshall has just been preposterous, just absolutely preposterous. Usage off the charts. The numbers he's been putting up numbers. The rebounding has definitely popped, and so is the scoring. There's just absolute raw volume there because he's literally the only guy that can get himself his own shot. And if PJ Washington isn't able to go, this is going to be a great opportunity for him once again to probably go over like his PRA line. We'll have to see exactly where that comes out for. But looking at the Spurs, Jeremy Sohan is questionable. Devin Vassell is questionable. There's an injury. It sounds like, okay, so two things. It sounds like it's a right wrist injury based on the reporting. I don't really know when. I was trying to figure out when exactly the injury happened, but it is his shooting hand. And the reason I think this is important, and I want to be on his under 2.5 threes, I think. I'm debating if I want to be on the threes or if I want to be on the points. The volume for him, part of the problem is the volume for him has been insane lately. But part of why I want to be on this under is if it's a shooting hand and it's a shooting wrist, problematic. At the end of the game, the last game that they played, Vassell was like 0 for 7 from the field. So I'm wondering if this injury happened before being like red hot going into that. So, or for like the first 3 quarters of the game. So I'm wondering if the injury happened like late in the 3rd quarter cycle, or if it was like early in the 4th quarter cycle, and then that impacted the shot. Part of my concern here, and like why I'm just kind of like waffling on this a little bit, is it's obviously like he's on the report. We'll see if he plays or not. Sometimes you don't know if those types of things really carry over, or if it's like it impacted him that day. It was uncomfortable, but then, a day or two later, it's not really a big deal. So have some concerns, but that's definitely a look. The Clippers are playing the Heat. Clippers are in an awful, awful rest spot. It's a back-to-back. We know that Norman Powell and Ben Simmons are both out already. This line is flipped to Miami being favored. It's in Miami. Who knows if James Harden is going to be at a strip club this morning? I don't know. So there's always that concern, right? And then, I would definitely, to me, this is a Heat or nothing bet. And then for Miami, Davion Mitchell's assists have been really good. In part, it's been their injury report has kind of allowed him to get a little bit more run. He only saw 20 minutes last game, so a little bit concerned about that. But definitely would consider a Davion Mitchell assist play in this game against the Clippers, potentially too, because Miami can kind of start maybe running away with it, and maybe Davion gets some more minutes in a little bit of a bigger win. Looking at the Suns versus the Rockets are 4-point home favorites. I think this is a really important game for both teams. Phoenix kind of needs the game, to be honest with you. And Houston has been sliding a little bit down the standings. So if we look at the standings in the Western Conference, Houston, who was the number 2 seed in the West at one point, is now all the way down at 5th. They are 40-25. Phoenix is 30-35. They are trying to climb into the 10 seed and pass the Mavericks, who are 33-33. Houston at 40-25 right now, they have a 3-game buffer in the loss column on the Warriors for the 6th seed and a 4-game loss buffer on the Timberwolves for the 7. You really got to avoid the 7 seed. You don't want to be in a situation where you have to be in the play-in tournament. You don't really want to be in a situation where you have to play the Denver Nuggets or the Oklahoma City Thunder. So, very important game for the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets also did something that was like, it was kind of stupid, but I also kind of respect it, right? So, we'll put it. So, number one, Fred VanVleet is probable for this game. The thing that was stupid was the other day, Houston is in a blowout and they're winning the game, and they decided that they were at the free throw line and they were making a decision basically that Amen Thompson was 1 rebound shy of his first career triple-double. So Ime Udoka, which I kind of like because I think it's important. Like some of those things are like important milestones for players, whatever. So he puts him in with like 30 seconds left to go, and you know what he does? He sprains his ankle, and now he's gonna be out for a couple games, maybe a week or two, right? And now that, like, Amen Thompson's been an incredibly important player for them. He's playing like 40 minutes a game, can defend every position, just an absolute demon on both sides of the ball. And you have to wonder, like, how does that impact them? Not 100% sure. I will say, though, that my initial thought is that the primary beneficiary of a lack of, like, Amen Thompson is probably Tari Eason. I'm going to pull up some numbers here right now, and it's going to be a little bit skewed because they've been missing players so much this season. But if you look at points per 100, actually, let's look at usage instead. Okay. So from a usage perspective, when Amen Thompson is off the floor, really the main players that see a big boost are like players that aren't really in a rotation. Aaron Holiday sees a little bit. Steven Adams sees a little bit. Not too much there, right? Looking, though, at some of the scoring, in terms of points per 100 possessions, playing alongside of Amen Thompson or not with him, Jabari Smith is actually like flat. Tari Eason does see a little bit of a bump, about a 10% bump in his scoring. And I think Dylan Brooks sees about a 15% bump in his scoring. Şengün actually sees a decrease. Fred VanVleet sees a pretty stark decrease, going from 23 points per 100 to 17 points per 100. So that's one of the most notable ones on the team. And from assists per 100 for the Houston Rockets this season, with and without him, Jabari Smith has dimed him a decent amount. But the player that actually sees the biggest swing is, again, we see a lot from Fred VanVleet. Fred VanVleet has a great on-court dynamic with Amen Thompson. Part of why I don't know if it's necessarily going to matter from like a counting stats perspective is because Amen Thompson kind of influences the game in so many different ways. And a lot of it has to do with the defense. A lot of it has to do with the flexibility that he provides for this Houston Rockets team. So he's almost like a purely additive player. He's not really taking away from anybody else in terms of their numbers, but he is influencing the team from a defensive perspective. He is able to handle some of those really tough defensive assignments like Kevin Durant, right? And instead, now you have to elevate Tari Eason into probably a bigger role, a little bit more Jabari Smith as well. And it just makes it a little bit more difficult to navigate on a nightly basis without really one of the best defensive players in the NBA. So now you have this game against the Phoenix Suns, who are 4-point dogs. I would lean towards Phoenix in this spot. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that now you have to fill in 40 minutes that you haven't had to fill in for the last, couple months because Amen Thompson's been playing so well. So for me, I'm looking at Phoenix here. And my initial thought was to look for Jabari Smith things, Tari Eason things. I think these Tari Eason lines are a little inflated. 13.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 1.5 assists. Even without Amen Thompson this year, it's a little bit tougher for me. He's had 18 points and 6 points. He's had 8 and 7 rebounds and 4 and 2 assists. So I think if you were going to do anything, if the line does pop, I would be looking for like a 7.5, maybe an 8.5 RA for Tari Eason. If I had to get in on anything, that would be the way that I was going for this game for a player prop. And then for your side, I do like the Phoenix Suns at +4. For the next team, we have the Utah Jazz versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Grizzlies big favorites. Jaren Jackson Jr. is out. Santi Aldama is out. Zach Edey is questionable. Brandon Clark is questionable. For Utah, Lauri Markkanen is questionable. Jordan Clarkson is questionable. Keontae is doubtful. I think Ja Morant's assist prop looks pretty good in this game. This is a spot that's going to be played with a ton of pace. He's going to have plenty of opportunities to dish the ball. It's open at 6.5. It's pretty much bet up immediately to 7.5. And I think I would still like it at 7.5, but I don't need it. Might want to play it maybe like in a parlay. I think that it's just a great matchup for him. I also kind of like some Zach Edey stuff in this game. I think this is a game that Memphis should be able to control from start to back. We'll see who on Utah plays. This is one of those things that Jim has talked about, Andrew has talked about, where Utah kind of plays their guys in games that they don't think that they're going to win. Gets them run, gets them a little bit of opportunity to be on the court, but they're just not going to win the game. But the game's a little bit more competitive. So I want to see how that injury report shakes out. I do think that Edey could have a good opportunity here. When they played back in January, put up 19 points, so pretty strong game, 19 points, 7 boards, and he had plenty of opportunities to kind of score. He had 5 for 8 from the field, made 2 threes, which is kind of crazy, and he got to the free throw line a lot. He got to the free throw line and 7 of 8 from the line. So I think that there's some good opportunity for Edey here, especially without Jaren Jackson Jr., especially without Santi Aldama. And if Brandon Clark's unable to go, he might really be like one of the only bigs for Memphis. So I think this is a decent spot for Zach Edey to kind of shine in a game against a relatively weak Utah team. Finally, one of the other good games on the slate, we've got the Minnesota Timberwolves versus the Denver Nuggets. Nuggets are 3.5-point favorites. I would probably be looking at Denver here. My immediate bet in this game was Rudy Gobert over 20.5 PRA. Jokic is probable, Murray's probable, Aaron Gordon is doubtful. The thing here, though, is that centers have just been crushing against Jokic just all season. And they've been crushing against this Denver Nuggets team. Gobert has been so good in this matchup, even historically, that I just couldn't avoid it, right? His PRA line at the 20.5, he has hit, I think this is just going to get bumped like immediately. But anyway, he's hit this in 81% of games against the Denver Nuggets over the past couple of seasons. This year, he put up 33. Was that 33? I think it's 33 and 34, maybe? Yeah, 33 and 34. Oh, I think that this line is just too low. And in large part, I think it's because Gobert missed a bunch of time coming into this game, or coming into the last game. And he only played about 20 minutes. And if you looked at that and you just were box score watching, you would look and go, all right, well, I guess he's on a minutes limit. He's probably not going to play a ton. Like, it's not great. I don't know if he's going to have a minutes limit today, whatever. It's really because he got 3 fouls like immediately. And he played like his normal-ish first quarter rotation and basically picked up 3 fouls immediately. Barely played in the first half. And then he played like a decent rotation in the second half. So I think had he not gotten into that foul trouble, he probably plays like mid-20s, maybe upper 20s in terms of minutes. And I think that that's just plenty of time, right? Obviously, if he's only going to play 20 minutes, we might be cooked anyway, but it's still a good matchup against the Nuggets. It's still a good matchup against Jokic. He could still do it in limited time. I think the line's too low. Part of why I went with PRA instead of PR, at the time anyway, PR was like 19.5. PRA was 20.5. And the assists have just been there, at least from a floor perspective, against Denver. He's had 1 assist in basically like 12 games in a row. So I like that. And then even looking at this season, if we look at his last 20 games, he has at least 1 assist in 19 of his last 20 games. He's got at least 1 assist in 82% of games this season, and he's averaging 1.8 assists per game. So I like the fact that I can just add in 1 extra stat. I need 1, right? But at the same time, there is a little bit of upside because in these last couple of games against Denver, he's got 5 dimes, 3 assists, 5 assists, 3 assists, 1, 2, 3. So when we look at it, he is dishing enough to warrant the fact that there is like some additional upside by adding in the extra stat, along with a really safe floor of the 1. Like I don't think I'm going to lose this bet because he gets no assists. And and then there's a situation where, he goes over the PR, maybe he gets 20 PR and doesn't get 21 PRA because he doesn't get an assist. So like I'm willing to roll those dice just based on the fact that I think that there's a pretty high floor for him to get 1 assist. So I like that. And for the game overall, it's tough for Denver. I think it's a tough spot for Denver. Obviously this is your 3rd game in 3 days or in 4 days. You had 2 tough games against Oklahoma City, but same time, you are pretty locked in here. I also think it's an important game too, because again, like if you look at the NBA standings right now, Denver would be playing Minnesota in the first round of the playoffs, assuming Minnesota wins or won the first playing game. I think you want to test some things out. I think you need to see what works, what doesn't work. I think you need to see how they maybe try to defend Jokic. Is there anything that you can do differently? And those are all like little micro adjustments, micro battles that you can do during the regular season. You don't change anything dramatically, but I do think that it's a spot where you can kind of pick and poke and see if there's something that can be done to improve your chances later on and see about filing something back for later. So I do think this is a spot where Denver might try to experiment a little bit, especially without where they're going to likely be without Aaron Gordon. But at the same time, it's still an important game. You're not they're decently far up in terms of not slipping out of the top 6, but you probably want to try to stay where you are. You probably want to keep that 2 seed in the Western Conference. So I do like Denver here. I lean Denver at the -3.5. I wouldn't be shocked to see this move anymore, but my best bet for that game is the Rudy Gobert over 20.5 PRA. All right, so before we get into pods and recs, I am gonna try to have some more guests on. Obviously, we had Prop Bomb on last week, in the works for a couple other people moving forward. So if there's anybody that you think that maybe you want me to try to have on, talk to about their capping style, we can try to do that a little bit as well. Just leave a note in the comments, but be sure, obviously, to like and subscribe to the podcast if you feel like this is helping you, if it's helping your analysis, if it's helping your work. It helps me if you do that. And obviously, if you subscribe, maybe we can start monetizing it a little bit besides some of the sponsorships and monetizing it on YouTube anyway, since we're doing it there as well. But this has been a really, really interesting season. And right now, especially at the end, we are in a little bit of a funky spot with, I think, a really strong draft class. I think that there is going to be a little bit of a sharper turn soon for teams to tank hard at the end of the season. Or as the NBA likes to say, focus on player development. If you look at the Eastern Conference, it's particularly interesting because Philly isn't actually that far out of the play-in tournament. Neither is Toronto. Neither is Brooklyn. They're all kind of within range of Chicago, who's 27-38 at the 10 spot. So we'll see. My thought is that most of those teams are going to pivot hard to a tank. And like I mentioned about the Scotty Barnes prop earlier today, that might give some indication of what exactly Toronto wants to do. In the Western Conference, Utah is clearly in a tank. New Orleans, decently in a tank. San Antonio has some cushion there, but even them, they have 37 losses, and the Blazers are at 38. Portland has been playing much better of late. Still would be shocking if they were able to make the playoffs, or honestly, if they were even able to make the play-in with as many games that are left. Not a lot of games, spoiler alert, but we'll have to see how that kind of shakes out. It wouldn't shock me if in a week, 2 weeks, or like a week and a half, if things start going really sideways for some of these teams, they go have like these protracted losing streaks. Like the Blazers are on a 4-game losing streak right now, where they go, we try, like, whatever. We're gonna make it, like, put it, like, we're gonna give it a good old college try to try to make the play in. We're not gonna make it there now. Let's just tank hard. We're gonna reset. We're gonna rest some of these guys that have injuries. We're gonna sit some of these other players. And I think that that's something that could definitely happen. And there's going to be a little bit of an opportunity where the power rankings aren't really right on these teams based on the fact that they had made like a little bit of a push. And then you're going to say like, oh no, they're like really trying to lose. And then even some of these teams that are really, really bad, they are going to be even more incentivized to be like worse because you're really trying to fight for the bottom, like right now, the Wizards have 13 wins. They're 13-51. The Jazz are 15-50, and the Hornets are 16-48. The draft lottery odds are important. Not so much that like if you have, because obviously you guys all kind of know now, but like just having the worst record, it gives you the best chance to get the number 1 pick. But still, the odds are that you don't get the number 1 pick. The thing that's important though is that if you have the number 1 odds, like for getting the number 1 pick, you can't fall that far. And in this draft, as good as it is, it does seem that there is like a fairly strong consensus that there is like a top 3, 4, 5, and you want to be in that. So the further, like the worse you are, the better chance you have for that, the better chance that you have of not falling to like 6, 7, 8, 9. And that I think is critically important for some of these teams. And they're going to do absolutely nothing to mess that up. And I think that's going to be really important to focus on as the season kind of comes to a close, the regular season anyway. All right. So for pods and recs, I am going to recommend going on a picnic, maybe sitting outside a little bit. I actually fired up the grill the other day. That was great. Clocks went ahead, went to Home Depot, picked up some new propane. Look, we could be like pellet snobs. We could be charcoal snobs, whatever. I don't care. Sometimes you got to be efficient. Sometimes you got to be fast. And, grilled up some chicken, grilled up some peppers and onions. It was great. I am going to wholeheartedly recommend, this isn't even an ad. My buddy Andy told me to get the Scrub Daddy like grill brush. It is literally the best thing I've ever used to clean a grill. It was unbelievable. It was like the best experience ever. It like steam cleans the grates. I couldn't believe it. No bristles, nothing. I was like, this is like the cleanest this thing's ever been. So could not recommend something more. It was like $20, not even. Just get it. That was the literal best. I was like, wow, like I could clean the grill all the time now. So just really couldn't recommend something many more. It was absolutely fantastic. So obviously, get that going on, get the grill going on, fire up the grill, fire up some patties, fire up some chicken, fire up some bets. And remember that you can perform even better if you use Rhythm, and you can get it for a week for free on us, on me. And then also like join the huddle. We're doing a 33% off sale right now. Get 4 months or pay for 4 months, get 6 months. So 6 months for the price of 4, 2 months off, whatever, however you want to frame it. I'm going to put the link in the bio as well. So you'll be able to pay for a grill for yourself with all these winning bets, and you guys can continue to cash that.